Okay guys, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a really special guest for you guys. Cheyne, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Well, thank you for having me, Mark. I really appreciate this.
No problem.
My name is Cheyne Walls, and I make my living as a fine art nature photographer who has been into wristwatches for a long time, and I actually use them as a true tool when I'm out in the field.
Absolutely. So I found Cheyne's channel, you know, kind of on the watch side, kind of on the photography side, the outdoor side, and I love the fact that he actually wears his watches as tool watches, and he actually has some very popular watches that I think normally don't necessarily see their full potential within their use case, and I think that's something that's really interesting to see that's out there that's a little bit different. Also, he's local to Southern California, typically located up in Orange County.
Yeah, gallery's based in Laguna Beach, California.
Awesome, beautiful up there. So
yeah, I love. Oh God, can't beat this though down here either, right?
Yeah, so we're
fortunate
actually
to be here.
We're down here in Del Mar, and we just figured, why don't we enjoy the weather, get together, talk watches, kind of figure out his story, and you know, hopefully connect him with a couple of new viewers, and also maybe give some of your current viewers you know, a different format to enjoy for a little bit.
Hope so. Yeah, very much looking forward to this for a while now.
Awesome. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, Cheyne, why don't you tell us a little bit about your collection?
Well, I don't want to start off on a negative, but my biggest mistake in watch collecting, still kind of haunts me now, is that I didn't collect or keep my original watches. I've been into watches for a long time. I was also fortunate enough to know that I wanted to be a photographer at a very young age. So I was in a dark room as a young kid in high school and everything like that. And that's where I found watches, and I found them as a true tool at that point where I needed a watch to time for the fixer, for the developer, and timing my film, and a few seconds off is a big deal in that process. So I found myself collecting watches in the way that, or at least wearing watches as a tool to time those exposures. And an analog watch really helped me out in the way that a digital watch, you had to push for the light to go on. The rubber kind of got the smell, the chemicals. So it wasn't the best. So I moved to analog, and my first real company was Swiss Army, now Victorinox, because I loved the lume on those watches. And that's what really got me into wearing that kind of nicer end watch. So I went from the Victorinox quartz, and when I got a little bit older, I thought, okay, let's get a little bit nicer. Quartz, the battery aren't the best in cold weather. I do a lot of extreme hiking, extreme weather. So I needed something that could hold up to colder weather where the battery was starting to die on me. So I moved, still in Victorinox, moved up the ladder a little bit to mechanical watches. This is where it really hooked me, and I got into the beauty and just the mechanic of watches, the making of it, seeing the back of the movement. That really pushed me into mechanical collecting of watches. And from there, it's kind of sky was the limit. Went through a bunch of different brands. If you asked me 5 years ago, I never thought I'd be into Rolex, but now I've moved into the Rolex. They've proven themselves as extremely tough tool watches and just great timepieces all around. And you always have to have, you know, a G-Shock in your collection, a Garmin. This is when I go hiking, just the GPS. And as I mentioned earlier, the beauty of mechanical watches is really starting to catch on to me, and I want to collect more of that in my collection. So now I'm just getting into the original tool watch, pocket watches. Okay, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm still so sad and a little upset with myself that I didn't keep a lot of my older watches. But this Victorinox, the infantry model, this is the first model I couldn't part with. This is still only my only chronograph. And it was just one of those watches that, as you can see from the scratches, and I think this is about the third or fourth strap I've had on this watch, this is just the mean, down and dirty, accurate quartz movement that I'll still take out. I did this a lot with my star trails and astrophotography because I can time, you know, 30, 40, 50 seconds on this watch. And I'll probably say this about all my watches, but it's become almost kind of a friend in a way that I put these things through so much and they just keep asking for more. Still, you can see here the battle damage on this thing. Quartz, so it's very accurate. Sometimes I'll take this just to set my other watches to, my mechanical watches, when they lose time. But this is just this is one of my first watches. I've had it for, I think, close to 10, maybe not quite 10 years. Don't quote me on that, 8, 9, 6 years, something around there. This is my oldest watch that I actually decided to keep and really jumped me into watch collecting. Moving up, I stuck with Victorinox, and as a kid, everyone has, you know, their Swiss Army knife, so I recognized the brand right away, and I stuck with them because they've proven to be tough. This is the same idea. This one though, I got, when I'm out, I do a lot of snow camping, and the quartz movements just couldn't quite keep up with the batteries, because a lot of the times I'll wear the watch on the outside of my jacket just because it's such a pain to keep taking the jacket on and off. And quartz movements, the batteries would die on me. So I had to move up to more of a mechanical watch. They don't have those problems. And I thought, well, I need a little bit nicer watch. I'm starting to do art shows. I'm starting to do events. Let's bump it up a little bit. So I got into the Airboss, the Victorinox Airboss. And I still think this is one of the best looking watches. I love how it's so compact. It has everything you need. Military time, the normal time, the minutes, the hours, all set aside, but it doesn't look too busy in my mind. And this is my first mechanical watch I've ever owned, and it always, you know, the first time you always get so excited to see the back, see the inner movement, see just the lovely detail and elegance that goes into making these watches. And this is really what set me off to going into, I don't want to say more refined watches, but it's along those lines of taking a watch this is the watch that showed me not all watches, they can be more than just tools. This is that elevated watch that could be so much more. That could be pretty much everything on your wrist, a tool. I mean, even if you want to go a fashion statement, it could be so much more than just a tool.
Oh, I agree. And I love the level of legibility, of course, and just balance and symmetry that you're going to find there. It's very classic, super versatile. And yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that we don't find too many models from Victorinox like that in today's catalog.
Yeah, it's sad because these were just so good, down and dirty. Like my earlier watch, this band is probably the third or fourth band on it. And even though, I mean, they're not cost certified, this one keeps about 12 to 15 seconds. So that's still pretty good for, I think when I got this was about $800 watch. I mean, that's a lot for a watch. To do this, and this I think is about 6 years old, 5 years old, it's held up pretty well. I had it serviced once. It was only $100 to service it. So these are special watches, and they get the job done for that price point. They do it well for that price point. So now we're jumping into the quote-unquote true tool watches, and it's been an interesting journey for me. I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I never saw myself as a Rolex guy. Growing up, I didn't do my research. I wasn't fully educated on watch collecting. It had that stigma to it. That's not is true to some people, not true to others. But it was one of those things where after my Airboss, my Victorinox, I really wanted to up my level. I'm now keeping my watches. So I want these watches now to last decades. I want to be able to pass these down to the next generation. And it was kind of a rough go after that because I went to many other luxury tool watch brands that are rivals to Rolex, and I would take them out on my shoots and they just didn't, for lack of a better term, cut the mustard. They were falling short for me, they were breaking, AR coating was coming off, a few little things like that, and I can dive more into that another time, but I was actually out to dinner with one of my good photographer friends, and I was telling him about this, saying, hey, I need a good, strong mechanical tool watch. What do you recommend? And sure enough, he lifted his sleeve and he had the Rolex Explorer 2. He had the previous model, the 216570. This is the 226570. And he's a great photographer. He works for National Geographic. And he said he's put this watch through hell and back and said he's wore it almost every day. Great watch, and he highly recommended it. So I thought, not really a Rolex guy, but let's try it. And I went into this watch. I still don't think this is the best looking watch. I think it's a little funny looking. Now I love that look. But he convinced me, so I went in, got it. I learned about the wait list then, waited for it. But now this is my most beloved watch. This thing, I cannot tell you how impressed I am with this watch and the way that this thing's been dropped. I fell out of a tree with it. It's tumbled down a hill. This thing has been, and I think the lowest is -20 degrees Fahrenheit, hottest 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and it keeps almost day accurate time. And I've beaten the heck out of this thing, and it just keeps coming back for more. And this is my kind of my gateway drug, so to speak, to Rolex. Is I was just so impressed. It blew everything else so much out of the water, and that hype of Rolex that hype comes from somewhere. It's almost as if, you know, a legend maybe isn't true, but there's a baseline to it. And I've really kind of fallen for these tough sports tool watches from Rolex because of this watch. It was just so amazingly incredible. And even to this day, beat the heck out of it. Keeps pretty much day accurate time no matter what I do with it. Now, so I have the Rolex bug has bitten me. And still along the whole lines and the whole storytelling of keeping now my watches, wanting to pass them down to the next generation, I figured my poor Rolex Explorer 2, that has been beaten to heck over and over again. So I thought, you know what, it might be a good thing to go just to have another one in the collection so I can spread out the punishment, so to speak, because I really want to keep these watches and I want to take care of them again, keep them for as long as I possibly can. And what better to kind of, if you want to up your tool watch to the most elegant luxury tool watch, where do you go? In my mind, I had to go to the Submariner. I had a great opportunity to get one on a short wait. Everything's from the AD here. And I thought, you know what, this has got to be the watch, as well as watch the metal, the ceramic, the inner movements. They're all great, they're robust. But no matter what, every watch just has, for water resistant, has a rubber tube. It's rubber, you can't do too much about it. And with all the swimming I do and a lot of I go through slot canyons, I'm diving in and out of water. So we know water resistance is not quite as deep. It's different measurement than how deep you go. It's the pressure on the watch. So I was thinking with my Rolex Explorer 2, it's out in the desert all the time. I could be drying that out. This is going to be more my water watch whenever I'm, you know, going through slot canyons in the ocean area. This is going to be that watch just to keep it a little bit more pristine and keep those gaskets and rubber tubing cleaner so the watch is always safe and will spread out the punishment. But this is just such a great watch. I use the rotating bezel to time my hikes, sometimes time my very long exposures. And like the Explorer 2, it keeps almost day accurate time. It's an amazing, this thing's been through hell as well. Dings, scratched up, but it just keeps working, and I'm so impressed with how Rolex handles extreme temperature changes. I've tested this watch in snow, hot summer days. It just keeps day accurate time. So with the Rolex bug biting me, this is just adding to that because I've just been so impressed with the watch. And this thing, again, it's gone through hell, looks pretty good. It just keeps doing what it can do, and I can wear this to maybe kind of a more formal event. So it ticks all the boxes for me in the way of a watch could. Okay, so now this was almost a little bit as a celebration. This is still, unfairly, I'm not treating this as a true tool watch, even though it's proven itself to be and might be one of the best tool watches ever made, better than the other two. Really depends on what you're using them for. But this was almost more of a buy as just a daily / dress watch. And I know that's unfair to this watch because this is as tough as they come. But just, I was so set in just the elegance and beauty of this watch. I've always had my eye on it. I always thought it was a little too simple for me. It doesn't have a date function. That always irked me a little bit. But when I actually saw this in my hand on my wrist, I fell in love with it. And this is, in the art world, the art world's tough to make a living. And we're celebrating now our 15-year anniversary of our gallery in Laguna Beach. And I wanted something special to put a memory of that. And this is going to be, like all my watches, I'm keeping them. I've learned my lesson. I'm not selling my watches anymore. This is really going to be that special watch to me. Every time I look at it, I foresee myself, 20, 30 years in the future wearing this watch, maybe some, hopefully some award events or something special to mark my photography. This is going to be that watch. I bought it for its toughness. I bought it for its elegance and everything in between, because this watch, it's got the history, and I love the history about it because who knows if it's true or not, if it is the first watch on Everest or not, and we'll never ever know. So in my personal opinion, I think that adds to the history. Some people want to believe this, some want to believe, I think it was the marks or the other watch was on Hillary's wrist, but this watch just has so much going for it. And this has really jumped me into more of my watch collecting and the elegance and beauty of watches. Still a tool, and I never see my collection having any gold or precious metals. This is going to be the most elegant watch I foresee myself having, because it's just the simplicity of this. It's just a beautiful watch, tough, down and dirty, can do anything, but you can wear it with a tuxedo or a suit, and that's really special to me. And to have the anniversary with it to remind me of it, it's going to be a special watch, and I'll keep this forever. So now, the big misconception of a watch collection is you have to have the Holy Trinity. I 100% disagree. The Holy Trinity watching of the watches, I think a must-have is a G-Shock or a Garmin. These things, they're just down and dirty, rough, do whatever you want with them. So I have to have a couple of my collection. This one is usually always with me. If I'm going out in the middle of nowhere, I can set my time with the G-Shock. This is my Garmin. This is the only time I will wear a watch on my right hand, just because it has the GPS function. And this is a little bit of my hiker's watch. If I'm going really deep into the jungle and unknown areas, I'll take more of a handheld Garmin, the InTouch. But just for everyday kind of areas I know, I'll take this just for the GPS function. This is just a nice little Sunday watch, and again, that's unfair for this watch, but it's a comfortable, easy watch, good, perfect watch for working out in, exercising. Good little watch that just rough and tumble. The only issue I have with these is they have their main function. I love it. They're great for most times. I just can't take these in cold weather or on long, extreme hikes when I'm out for 10, 15, 20 days out in the wilderness. This one has to keep recharging, so I obviously can't bring that because I can't recharge it. I don't have power to me. And this one being a quartz movement, I lose it on very cold temperatures. I actually lose power for this watch. But other than that, every day, most scenarios, these watches are just great, down and dirty, perfect watches to always have on you. Now, Victorinox to a certain extent, but now Rolex has really showed, and those other brands too that I talked about, moving into just the pure, I don't want to say luxury of watches, but just what goes into building a mechanical watch, the science, the manufacturing, the detail, that's really got me interested in watches. So I've moved to the original tool watch, is a pocket watch. And these are just so fun to collect. This is the Hamilton Railmaster Special. And the fun thing about this one, it's accurate, it's fine, it's about 8 seconds fast, so that's pretty good for a watch from the 1940s, 1950s. The fun thing I love about this piece is I was able to do the research with the serial number on this to find out this was purchased by a rail, I guess you'd call it company, a rail company, and was actually serviced too by that rail company. So that just goes to show this was actually used on the railroad. And that's really fun to me, a little bit of Americana history. That's just a fun idea to know that this watch, someone was using it to time the rail system, you know, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, when rail was a huge part of building and growing this country. This is really special to me, and just the detail that goes into building these watches, the precision. These are becoming real kind of my watch collection. All these other watches are mostly tools for me. They have a certain purpose. They can do other things, but they're tools. This is purely my hunt for collecting, and I'm very much enjoying the research I can find on these, and just, again, the precision and beauty that goes into building these watches. Another pocket watch, American. This one's from Illinois, which I think actually Hamilton ended up buying out this company in the late or early 1930s. But this, another special idea, and this is what's teaching me about watches and really jumping into it. When I saw this watch, I was a little disappointed, too strong a word, but I didn't really think much of this watch because it's not real gold. So I thought, okay, if it's not real gold, the movement probably isn't the best. Turns out though, back then, people would buy the movement, the watch movement separately, and then buy a case to fit that movement in. And I thought that was really interesting. So this almost turns out to be a true enthusiast watch because they spent all the money on their movement and just got kind of a cheaper case because they're really into the movement. And what proves that as well is when I found this watch, open up the hunter's back, it actually has the records of him servicing it and the detail of keeping this serviced. And you can just see how old this is. He got it engraved too, 1883. And this watch still works. I'm trying to find a special person to service this, But my heart just goes out. That is such an incredible thing to be that old, still keeps decent time, and just that this was so special to someone because of the detail, the precision, the elegance of watchmaking, and that pushes off of me, and I'm very excited to have this in my collection.
Oh wow, so that was a really cool journey in terms of kind of seeing things broken down. That's something that I feel like I kind of miss out on in terms of my collecting, because so much of it is based on content for the channel in terms of things coming in, coming out, things I want to try out and share. I love to be able to see these kind of journeys where they're just a little bit more deliberate, more purposeful. I like that you kind of broke it down into subgenres, where you had those watches that kind of started the journey, the watches where you're kind of more at the apex in terms of what you're looking for, and then of course leaning into the appreciation for watches, and then on the other parallel, you know, just the straight up functionality, which I think is also, I mean, that space alone can be, you know, probably a whole episode, but I like that for you were able to kind of split it up and kind of find a niche for each one. We talked about this a little bit before we started filming, was, you know, a lot of times collectors can fall into that trap of trying to have the one watch that can do everything, and you know, as you progress, you find yourself slowly kind of finding what you appreciate about each model that make it different, that kind of don't make it the definitive one watch, and those are the things that kind of get it to, you know, be on your wrist a little bit more often.
Yeah, well, and it's been a fun journey, and that's what's been kind of the fun thing. You were saying about how YouTube kind of dictates what watches you get. YouTube in a way actually pushed me into more watches, because I used to do videos a lot for my photography, the story behind the image, what it really takes to get these photographs. It's not just you walk up, take out your iPhone, take this picture. Some of these are week-long journeys.
Oh, wow.
But I was wearing my Rolex Explorer 2 in one of those videos, and a client came up to me and said, "What watch is that? That was beautiful. I love how you used it." I thought, interesting, would that really work? And I started getting a lot of more comments on that, and that's what actually started my YouTube channel, because people wanted to know more about that watch at that journey point. So it was a fun thing, and that's the fun thing about collecting and watches. There's this huge group of people out there, fun, interesting people like yourself, that there's great stories, and every little story, every scratch has a story kind of thing, but talking and meeting with others, that really sets it home, and that's a lot of fun. I'm really getting into this. I'm still very young at this, collecting. It's fun to meet people like you and just really go on these stories, go on these journeys with you together, and to have an audience that YouTube can provide.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like the narrative of your channel is really interesting. It's very function forward, and I like that it touches on a lot of the pieces in terms of luxury and marketing that maybe get pushed to the forefront in a lot of other things in terms of brand cachet, and instead you're like, well, I'm looking for something that's reliable. You know, a quartz watch, as much as people love quartz watch and quartz timekeeping, you don't hear a lot of people talk about how when you take it out to freezing weather, those batteries can die. So I need something mechanical, I need something robust. And I think that's really what sets Rolex apart in terms of where it is within the market, because what they really made luxurious was reliability.
Yeah,
at the end of the day, right? They made, during a time when the best watches were actually probably the most fragile, right? And still, to a certain extent, there are certain high-end hot horology pieces that are quite fragile. You drop it on the floor and it's a tile floor, you're done.
Yeah.
Here in this case, the reliability, I think even Rolex can take some credit for just the term Swiss made, feeling like something of robustness, of quality. And I think that's really where it sets Rolex apart from a lot of other brands in terms of, you know, as complex or simple, however you want to put it, in terms of their finishing, it's just the tolerances are so tight, it's mechanically just very refined.
Yeah.
And that's something that not every brand can give you, you know, as kind of a testament to what you mentioned in terms of your journey and trying out different watches along the way.
And that's really, Rolex, it still has that stigma about it. But these are, I can honestly say, these are really good to watch, and they're a lot tougher than I ever would have given them credit for. These can really, they can take a punishment, but I also too like how they've been proven to last.
Absolutely.
The finishing's not quite important to me. I think the finishing will grow. It's growing on me now when I move into my pocket watches, and the true horology will grow on me. But for now in my collection, something that's down and dirty that I can use. And memory, I mean, this, again, back to the Explorer 2, it's got this horrible big scratch right here that I absolutely love. This is the highlight of the piece for me. I was out in the wilderness and this massive bear just came out of nowhere. Oh my. And I'm wearing this watch and the bear was pretty docile. It started walking around, but I kind of followed it and started photographing it. It sat down, and if Mother Nature, bless me, a perfect ray of light onto this bear. And I crouched down and I just nail my watch on a rock. But the great thing, I didn't even think about it because I was getting this amazing shot. But now every time I look at that big, massive scratch, it takes me right to that spot, right up to the Eastern Sierras, photographing one of the most beautiful scenes I've ever seen. And to know, and the watch didn't miss a beat. So it's nice to know you can just take these watches anywhere, do anything to them, and they'll just keep that story with you, and I can pass it on later.
I love that. Yeah, the storytelling, the romance of this, these products can kind of outlive you, and you're just kind of a caretaker for them along their own journey. That's a great way of putting it, caretaker. Yeah, I think that's awesome, and I mean, and it goes to show that a lot of these designs are very timeless in terms of your taste, right? You're looking at these Swiss Army watches, the Victorinox watches, Arabic numerals, very function-forward layout, but that's still echoed within, some of the other collecting that you've done, where it's a lot about the balance, the symmetry, the ultimate legibility at a glance. So it's that kind of continuous journey where, we talked about, I mean, I can even see whether it's Roman numerals or Arabic numerals, right? There's a certain level of balance and legibility, kind of adds to the timeless nature. And I know sometimes you want to find stuff that's contemporary and kind of fancified and very detailed and complex, but I think there's definitely a case, especially for within these brands that are very historically function-forward tool watches, to where it's just very iterative. It's not a revolution, it's just an evolution. Like the Porsche 911, it's timeless. You recognize it and you see something special. And yeah, there's going to be that enthusiast tier where they're going to notice, hey, is this a GT3? Is this not right? And they'll get into the weeds. But I think at a glance, you see that oyster case, you see, you see a little bit of gloss on that dial, and it's just like, oh yeah, oyster bracelet. It's just very iconic, and I think that's something that you can't pay for, right? Like it's really kind of like you two touched on before. It's almost like it was always there, right? It wasn't created, it was discovered, right?
Yeah. Well, and it was one of those things, I mean, with the Victorinox, that's a pilot's looking watch. And I always thought I needed a pilot's watch. I love the numerals, everything like that. But when I kind of graduated more into the Rolex, the simpler look, it actually proved to be more functionality than I thought it would be. Because with my camera, and your audience should know, I use what's called a technical camera, which means there's nothing automatic about it. So I have to use these tool watches to time my exposure. Everything on it, clicking to the shutter, changing the aperture, these are all different numbers to me. So in my brain, I'm not the sharpest tool in the drawer, I'll be the first to admit that. But looking at the Victorinox, and all of a sudden, and just the way my brain works, I'm looking at that and I'm seeing 1 through 12 numbers. Then I'm looking at my camera and there's, ISOs, shutter speeds, hundreds of numbers. It does play with your mind a little bit. When I went to the Rolex, I found it to be simpler, that I'm just going between circles and just little indices, and it did help in a way that it was so simplified. Just that little micro thing, it just simplified my brain a little bit to help me out in my photography. I never thought that way about a tool watch, but as you collect and as you grow, you realize these things when you experience them. And I thought that was so interesting, that just that little difference does make such a big difference.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And that's one of those things where it's just about that intuition and how intuitive and natural something can feel on the wrist. And again, it's that ultimate legibility. You see a big triangle at the top, that's 12 o'clock orientation. And as much as it's nice to see the numerals, right, you're exactly right, where if you're doing something, you're timing something, you're manually adjusting anything, you have enough numbers kind of jumbling around in your head.
Hundreds of numbers,
so, yeah, I've never heard that, but I love that idea that, again, there's another level of functionality within the design. It's not just because it's iconic, it became iconic
because
due to, you didn't have to change it. which I think is really awesome, and just covering the wide spectrum of, I mean, even down to, you have watches that are on leather straps, watches that are on bracelets, pocket watch, then watches that are going to be more, you know, rubber and you know, silicone based, and they're going to be more comfortable in terms of just really gripping your wrist in certain types of situations in different climates. Yeah, I love that it's well defined, well partitioned, and in terms of what you've been looking for, you've even, you know, had that very strategic and deliberate approach to, I want this watch for the artistry, right? When it comes to pocket watches, for the history, for those little details, and then, hey, I want these Rolexes for the stripped down nature of them, right? And then diving into mechanical watches, it was more so for that ultimate big picture robustness versus kind of the short frame, which is, okay, well, my quartz watch is always going to be keeping good time. I can grab it and go. It's great for the grocery store, but not necessarily great depending on, you know, what peak you're going to be climbing to.
But it also does have its great benefits. If I'm going out to the desert, and if I'm out on a 20-day trip, it is perfect because it weighs nothing, just to keep in my backpack. And if I do need to set the time on a Rolex, that is going to be more accurate. So there is no perfect watch. There never will be for every person. So it's nice to be able, and like we've always mentioned, we talked about it off camera, one of these watches is supposed to be my one and done. That just can't happen. So why not just create this great little group of watches that can be perfect for you, and no one else is going to have that same collection. And the way that you use them, no one else is going to use them in the same way. To make the perfect tool, it almost has an art or an elegance to it, like the watch itself. And that's what I'm really having fun with. I'm going to use these as a tool, but I need to make that perfect tool via a few different watches. The elegance, horology, that's more for me kind of as a fun thing. And then the tool side of it, that's still that collection that is now perfect for me. Not quite perfect, I still have a little work to do on this collection, but it'll be there sooner or later. It's fun, I love topic, and it's just so much branches off from it.
Absolutely, and like you mentioned, is everyone has a different use case, right? And you know, for some folks, some of those watches that are on the table could be that grail, the one that they're collecting more for the historical value versus something they're going to wear and put through its paces. And it's more of, okay, this is that achievement kind of piece. And then for you, it's just like, well, I needed it for this specific use and to use it as a tool. And I love that, you know, depending on which lens you put on that, depending on your own personal journey, your own story, you can really use all of these in different ways. I mean, there could be somebody who's like, hey, well, I'm going to be, you know, when I retire, I want to go work the railways at, you know, at a fun little thing for kids, and I want to have a cool looking, you know, pocket watch. And that can be, you know, an actual tactile, useful tool for them, right? In terms of kind of recreating that theme, that aesthetic, that history, and tying into it. And
adding to the history of that watch too. You'll be able then to talk about that. You did this with this watch that already did this on the rails, and yeah, this is so fun. And it takes it with you. These just take it with you and just keep passing down. As long as you pass down the stories, the scratches help, and just keep passing those down. You take care of these watches, they're all pretty much make it through, and that's what I'm really finding with this. It's so much fun with collecting.
Very cool. Well, honestly, I could talk shop with you all day, Cheyne. Why don't you go ahead and actually quickly, before we get out of here, let's do a quick customary wristwatch check. I know you laid out the watches that you, of course, were within your collection, but what do you have on your wrist today?
This is slowly becoming my daily driver, so to speak. The Rolex Explorer. This is the 40 millimeter, the newer one. And I've always loved these watches, just 36, and even the 39 was a little too small for me. This 40 is just perfect size, the shimmer, the toolness of it, the elegance of it, I'm finding it to be a perfect watch.
That's awesome, and that's actually something we talked about off camera, which was, you know, the ultimate spec hunting in terms of the sizes. And I know there's a lot of people that are specifically hunting the smaller version of that, but I love that you gravitated towards the larger one, which honestly, bust out the calipers, it's going to be still pretty close to a 39 millimeter.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the proportions are what worked out best for you, and it wasn't just the ultimate.
Yeah, the
dimensions.
lugs are a little bit different than the 39, and just the set and having the bigger watches, the Submariner, the 41, the Explorer 2, 42. It was a little jarring to see a 36 on my wrist. So the 40 just really makes it personal opinion. It just fits my personal taste.
Yeah, and I mean, if we go back, I mean, at one point, people's daily wear was a lot dressier, so that's why smaller dress watches under a sleeve, under a cuff, like those things made more sense. But hey, we're keeping it short sleeves today. Yeah. The weather's out, the sun's out, so it's pretty nice. So I think that is something that I think can get overlooked at times in terms of people do want something that's going to be timeless, but in terms of the proportions, that's something that can absolutely be more contemporary and more about the personal fit for each person.
100%, 100%. They all have their own goods and bads. It's just how you take them and how you wear them and how do you want to wear them.
Absolutely. Actually, wristwatch check for me. I'm actually wearing my Grand Seiko kind of Explorer 2-esque piece.
That's a beautiful
because
piece.
I actually enjoyed his coverage and his journey that he's taken with his Explorer 2 so much. I figured he might, get a kick out of this. It was kind of like the Japanese take on the Explorer 2 with that really signature steel outer bezel that keeps the 24-hour timing for travel or spelunking. If you're in a cave at and whether it's AM or PM and that whole side of it. So a whole lot of fun. But let's go ahead and let everyone out there know a little bit about where they can find you, where they can get more updates.
Everything is on my website at www.cheynewalls.com, and Cheyne is spelled Cheyne, so it's a little bit different, but you can find me there. My art gallery is in Laguna Beach, and upcoming soon. When's this video coming out? Rough.
I'll probably in about 2 weeks. Maybe.
Oh, perfect. So then, if you're in the area, Southern California area, I'll be explaining my limited edition work at the Festival of Art Pageant of the Masters in Laguna Beach. It's a 2-month show starting, I think July 5th is the opening day. Come say hi. I'm at booth 17 this year. Bunch of great artists. It's a great show, live music I think almost every night now. So come say hi. I think tickets are between $10 and $15. Come say hello to me and all the social media, just everything's at Cheyne Walls. Type that in, you'll find me.
Awesome. And if you guys are big on Instagram, I know that your Instagram is actually pretty well curated in terms of the mixture of pictures, really beautiful scenic shots, as well as some really great studio, kind of in-studio shots of some of these watches, which I think is really entertaining as well.
Yeah, go to Cheyne Walls for my more photography. And, what's my other one? You'll have to leave it in the link below. I think it's the Gentleman Traveler. It's more my watch content when I'm out on location of the watches that I'm wearing.
Very cool. Well, thanks so much. Really appreciate you coming in.
Oh, no, thank you. This has been a great fun experience. I love the watch community, the crowd. It's a fun community. I'm looking forward to getting more and more into it as I go. Absolutely.
Well, guys, you guys know I'm trying to expand the format, get out there, do some things, take advantage of the weather and the location that we're in. If you like the video, please do it like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.